Hello again, everyone. It's Rob Ryder on August 30th, 2015. That would be a Sunday. And we're going to talk about Education Day USA, which I didn't realize until yesterday was March 26th, 1991. I must have missed it, but I went and read about it, and all I can tell you now is, welcome to America. I think you'll be quite surprised what happened on that day. And I am Rob Ryder. Well, that's my avatar. My email address is courtofrecord@aol.com, COURTOFRECORD. And I do post most of the things I do at a WordPress site called Rob Court of Record. Not with two B's, though, just one, R-O-B, Rob Court of Record. .wordpress.com, and if you subscribe there or to the YouTube channel, if I do another video, which I'm sure I will, hey, you would get a heads up. Because all I can tell you is, I've done a lot of videos, and while all the information is pretty much correct, the problem is the people that we're taking it to try to get a remedy are usurping an office. Most of them weren't properly, they're not properly elected. And so I did a video on that yesterday about a thing I had found I didn't realize before. But so we're going to tie that into this too, a little bit more on what to look for as far as an elected official to see if they've been elected. And when you find an error in their paperwork, or they don't have their certificate of election, or whatever it ends up being, you should be able to go to a peace officer, and he should initiate a criminal proceeding. That's what it says in the election code, as we'll see. But let's get educated first. And I hate to ask, but if you can donate, I really would appreciate it. That's pretty much all I do, and I'm looking for a remedy to get out and get everybody out, not just one thing, but whatever the remedy is. And to do that, I got to spend a lot of time doing this, reading all this stuff, and then trying to decipher it. So if you can, please do. AshleyRytlewski@gmail.com is the PayPal account. AshleyRytlewski@gmail.com. There's always snail mail to myself, Robert Rytlewski. That's my full name, not my proper person name, but that would be the full name. 10955 14 Mile Road Northeast, Rockford, Michigan 49341. And the last video I did was called Authority Ordained by God, and what I was trying to point out in that is, according to the book of Romans, chapter 13, I believe, the Apostle Paul is saying that as righteous people we shouldn't fear the authority ordained by God, because there is one, and they're the authority because they are ordained by God. And they're really there to, smack down the evil. So we got to go to the authority ordained by God. And, the people that we're going to, by and large, aren't them. And so if you were to go back into Old English law, because that's where our laws come from, and for a lot of reasons we are under English law. I think we're in the United States of America, which King George III and his successors are the king of. Not the United States of America. That is the style of the Confederation. Just United States of America. And so we're under English law, and if we're under English law, then we need to think, well, what did they do back in the day? And what they did back in the day was that the king put a guy called the coroner, at the time called the crowner, because he was the king's agent, in every county, sometimes 4, sometimes more, sometimes less. And their job was to keep the pleas of the crown. That was their first task ever, which is all the complaints that the crown is going to have an interest in. And if you know anything about criminal law, the only way they can charge you for an infraction of the criminal code is the state. It's their code. They would have to do it. Well, back in those days, it would have been the king. So the coroners would keep the complaints that were brought to him that the king was going to have an interest in. He would put them in his book and then give them to the sheriff. And the coroner's job is to make sure that the sheriff executes the law. Right? Whatever else the sheriff needs to do, he'll take care of. We just need to get it in the book first. And the coroner ended up becoming maybe called the conservator of the peace, maybe be called the justice of the peace, maybe still called him coroner, could be a medical examiner. I don't really know who it is yet. Those are just the things that are kind of covered in this other video, which we're going to tie into in just a second. But with no further ado, let's go see what Education Day USA is all about. So there was a Public Law 102-14 of the 102nd Congress, March 20th, 1991, joint resolution, in which it said, whereas Congress recognizes the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded. Oh, okay, our great nation is going to be founded on this. Whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society since from the dawn of civilization, when they were known as the 7 Noahide Laws. Ooh. Wow, so our nation was founded on the 7 Noahide Laws. Noahide? Noahide? I don't know how you say that. All I know is they're Jewish laws, and, well, I'm not Jewish, so I don't see how they would apply to me, but let's continue reading. Whereas without these ethical values and principles, the edifice of civilization stands in serious peril of returning to chaos. Whereas society is profoundly concerned with the recent weakening of these principles that has resulted in a crisis that beleaguered and threatened the fabric of civilized society. Whereas the justified preoccupation with these crises must not let the citizens of this nation lose sight of their responsibility. The citizens of this nation, it's their responsibility to transmit the historical ethical values from our distinguished past to the generations of the future. Whereas the Lubavitch, I guess it would be, movement, has fostered and promoted these ethical values and principles throughout the world. Oh, aren't we just so lucky that they've been busy? Whereas some rabbi, leader of some movement, is universally respected and revered for his 89th birthday falls on March 26th. Whereas in tribute to this great spiritual leader, the Rebbe, in his 90th year, will be seen as one of education and giving, the year in which we turn to education and charity to return the world to the moral, ethical values contained in the 7 Noahide Laws, and whereas this be reflected in the International Scroll of Honor signed by the President of the United States and other heads of state, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled that March 26th, hey, there's more, believe it or not, 1991, the start of the 90th birthday of some teacher of the law, is designated as Education Day USA. The President is requested to issue a proclamation calling upon the people of the United States to observe such day with appropriate ceremonies and activities, because our laws, our nation is founded on these 7 man-made laws of a bunch of, people who said, hey, this is the way we think it is, and we're going to put it on you, and we believe it to be true. So, I didn't know anything about that, so I had to go check that out a little bit more, and found some things written about it. Let's see what other people had to say. So this public law is an American federal law passed in 1991. It can be found in the American Library of Congress. Yes, it can, and it was signed by President George H.W. Bush. Well, I can tell you this is a certified copy from, authenticated copy from the Government Information Office. I guess that's what they're talking about. So yeah, it's a law. Aren't we lucky? The law asserts that Congress recognized the 7 Noahide Laws as the historical tradition, ethical values, principles are the basis of civilized society upon which our great nation was founded. Our nation was founded on Jewish law, and I thought it was a Christian nation. I've been set straight. The law asserts that without these ethical values and principles, the edifice of civilization stands in serious peril. Well, we just read that. And the society is profoundly concerned with the recent weakening of these principles. Jeepers, we quit enforcing Jewish law on everybody. The law asserts that it is the nation's responsibility to transmit these historical ethical punishments on everybody else. That's me interpreting. So some movement had some old Jewish guy who called himself a rabbi, a teacher of the law, who in the book of Matthew, in about chapter 23, is going to get slammed with the 7 woes. Because when it says teacher of the law, they're talking about a rabbi. Anything to do with the law would have been a rabbi. Is respected and revered and that blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what about this? And then this was just what I read you from the law. Yeah. What did the Jewish Encyclopedia have to say about this? According to the 7 Law section of the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia, all human beings are descendants of a man named Noah, who alone, with his family, survived the worldwide flood. Noahide refers to Noah. The encyclopedia entry states that Jewish rabbis have determined that since we are all children of Noah, and the Noahide laws were given to him, they are binding upon all humanity, not just the Israelites. Well, for myself, I object. Right? I rebut your presumption. Got nothing to do with you. The section states that these 7 Noahide laws are not found in the Old Testament of the Bible. Oh, they're not in the Old Testament. They were introduced later in a book called the Talmud. It's a Jewish holy book. Oh yeah, it's holy, all right. It's just satanic, if that can be holy. According to the entry, the 7 Noahide laws are: do not worship idols, do not blaspheme, establish courts of justice. We got a law that says we got to have courts of justice. Can you imagine that? Not to kill, not to commit adultery, not to rob, not to eat flesh. Well, so, do not blaspheme. Well, if you're not a Jew and you pray to Christ as your Savior, well, that would be a blasphemy. So I guess I would be blaspheming. And of course, Talmudic Jews don't pray to God anyways. They pray to some entity. Apparently to a guy named Brother Nathaniel, B-R-O-T-H-E-R, Nathaniel, born Jewish, converted to Russian Orthodox, has lots and lots of videos on YouTube. Right? When they're standing up in front of that wall doing the old pelvis pump there, they're having sex with somebody. Apparently so. I didn't say it. A Jew did it. A guy that learned the ropes, so to speak. According to Judaism, the Noahide laws against blasphemy, idolatry, adultery, and the command to set up courts of justice are mandatory upon non-Jews just as they are in Israelites. Well, I thought I was supposed to follow the 10 Commandments. Why have Jewish religious laws been recognized by American federal government system? I'd kind of like to know that too. Their federal legal system. Is that why they're black robe priests? The above-mentioned laws would impinge on the rights and freedoms of non-Jews. It would seem blasphemy. Are non-Jews not allowed to question and disparage the Jewish religion and the Jewish God of the Talmud? Yeah, yada, yada, yada. There's some better stuff in here. The 7 laws, the laws which were supposed by rabbis to have been binding upon all mankind at large, even before the revelation at Sinai, which are still binding upon non-Jews. Aren't we lucky? Right, so we could go on and on and on, but you can go read this for yourself. I didn't say it. Right? The frickin' the 102nd Congress said it. Whereas Congress recognizes the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded. Whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization, when they were known as the 7 Noahide laws. There's your history lesson. There was one more thing I wanted to see in here for we should read some of this. So, Noahide, Noachids, Noachids, right? Non-Jews, children of Noah. Well, I thought we're all children of Noah. I thought that was the point. But no, we're non-Jews, children of Noah. How do they do that? Are subject to a different or less fair legal system than Jews. Oh, yeah, that is something about the Talmudic law that if you're a Gentile, well, you can be cheated in law and business, according to the Talmud. A non-Jew can be sentenced to death with only one witness and by one judge. Yeah, but what if the witness lied? Well, I guess you won't be around to talk about it. There won't be any evidence. Because all the major crime or all the major punishments are decapitation. Okay, according to the procedure, non-Jews are required to establish approved courts of justice in every city and province to judge people according to the laws and warn them against transgressions. A non-Jewish court would never judge people according to Jewish law from the Talmud. These are most certainly Jewish Talmudic-based Noahide courts. And this is what's in the corporate body politic. They're not the courts of the sovereign state. These are the courts that are considered lawful tribunals, as you see I talked about in the video yesterday, as defined in the Michigan Penal Code, where it talks about there's two different kinds of lawful tribunals, and a lawful tribunal can be a private organization enforcing its own laws on its members, and that's where they're trying to get you to be, is in the county of Kent instead of in Kent County, for instance. The county of Kent is the corporate body politic organized as a corporation just prior to the state of Michigan becoming a state, so it was already here, grandfathered in. And then comes the state with a state subdivision called a county, which in that case is called Kent County. See, one's called Kent County, the other one's called County of Kent. One has jurisdiction as a corporation within itself, the other one is the state jurisdiction, and this Talmudic system is keeping us locked in the corporate body politic and not seen in the state. So you've never been a citizen of anything in your proper person. You are stuck in United States of America under King George III's successors. And the way it was in England was the Jews ran the cities for the king. They were the king's property. And if you were a Christian, your only choice was to go to the coroner, which is why we got to go to a coroner to have him get the sheriff to do what the sheriff is supposed to do, or, the king will come down to the sheriff. So, there would be non-Jewish courts, but they're not the ones you're going to. You're going to these private corporation courts called lawful tribunals. Google it. I'm sure there's a definition for it. It's in the Michigan in the Michigan Penal Code. And I talked about it in the video yesterday. So that's the big thing to me, right, is that's the courts we're going into. And in a Talmudic court, you're not going to ever win. And I'd always thought that's had to be what the system was. But now I have evidence that, well, that is what it is. It's the basis of the nation. That nation, whatever nation that is, that's the nation I'm getting away from. And so how we're going to do that is, for this to work, these people got to lie to us. Well, they're experts at it, right? They're the sons of the devil, according to Christ, right? The father of the lie. He was talking about the Jews, like the Pharisees and the rabbis, them kind of people, and to get the rest of them to follow him. But that's who he was speaking about in the seven woes. So what are we going to do? What can we do? Well, I'm going to try this. Right. So in the video yesterday, I had pointed out that in the Michigan election law, it says that peace officers have a duty. And their duty is, it is hereby made the duty of any police, sheriff, or peace officer present and having knowledge of any violation of any of the provisions of this act to forthwith institute criminal proceedings for the punishment of such offender. Well, I guess what that would mean is if somebody isn't following the election law, isn't properly elected, that I should take it to a peace officer and they could institute criminal proceedings and have that person removed from office. Okay. So how do you do that? What would you look for? That's the next thing. And that's what I was covering yesterday. But, where you're going to find it is in your election law. So mine looks like this. 287 pages long, Act 116 of 1954, Michigan election law. And, there's many interesting things to look at. I'm not going to try to go through them all today. But in Michigan, it shows, right, that in the office of the Secretary of State, it's a little bit too big. 140. PA 65 continues with the supervision of the Director of Elections to be appointed by the Secretary of State under Civil Service Regulations. The Director of Elections shall be vested with the powers and shall perform the duties of the Secretary of State under his or her supervision with respect to the supervision and administration of election laws. The Director of Elections shall be a non-member Secretary of State Board of Canvassers. All that to tell you that under the Secretary of State is a place called the Bureau of Elections, and the director of that apparently acts as the Secretary of State in anything to do with elections. So when it says the Secretary of State may create a piece of paper, it should be the Bureau of Elections that's doing it. So, but whoever it is, eventually we're going to want to ask somebody for some paperwork to prove that somebody else was elected. And so one of the pieces of paper, it's called the Certificate of Determination. And pretty much every office, whether, we're looking at the governor, lieutenant governor, so state offices, county offices, federal offices, anybody who's elected, somebody has to certify that, they were elected. So, for instance, for the governor, lieutenant governor, the Board of State Canvassers shall determine which candidate for governor and lieutenant governor has received the highest number of votes and shall declare a candidate as such to be duly elected. The said board shall forthwith make and subscribe on its statement of return. So there's some document called the statement of return, and on there they're going to subscribe a certificate of such determination and deliver the same to the Secretary of State. Excellent. There's something called a certificate of determination that's been filed with the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State, as far as elections is concerned, is the director of the Bureau of Elections. Okay, then the Secretary of State shall file in his office and preserve the original, right? So that's where it's supposed to keep it there. So it's with the Secretary of State, the original statement and determination. And shall forthwith execute and cause to be delivered to the person thereby declared to be elected to the office of governor, lieutenant governor, certificate of election certified by him under the Great Seal of the state. So not only is there a certificate of determination, there is a certificate of election, which in most cases, I believe, well, most cases I'm sure, is the Great Seal of the state is on it. I think in the county it's the county seal. But everywhere else it's the Great Seal of the state. So I picked on the the guys that would be called circuit court judges yesterday here in Michigan. And it says for them that they should have one of these certificates of election from the governor. So go ask him for it. They don't have one. Well, that's something to take to this peace officer. Right? So it's you're a couple of FOIAs or phone calls or however you figure is best for you to get the information. I'm going to leave that to everybody else because we all have the way we like to do our work, right? So whatever it is, either have them send it to you or tell them they don't have one. You don't really care which one it is. Hopefully they don't have one, but make them put it in writing and send it to you. And then take it over to the peace officer who's supposed to enforce this law. All right, so Secretary of State, Attorney General, same. United States Senator, same. Representative of Congress, same. State senators, same. County officers, same. But these are by the county canvassers. This is different. Now, I guess the only difference is this is a board of county canvassers instead of a board of state canvassers. Right? So far, I forget. Like in Michigan, if you just go, elections in Michigan would be a good way to search it, obviously, because that's what shows up. All right, here's pretty much everything to do with the state canvassing, and while we're not going to look at any of it hardly at all, what you're going to want to remember is where this campaign finance disclosure stuff is at. Because if these people went through the process to be elected and took money but didn't get the certificate from whoever, which means they didn't take the oath, the job, well, that's campaign finance fraud. And you can point that out to the nice peace officer as soon as we figure out who they are. All right, so I'm not blaming the cops. Right out of all this, what's going to happen is that the police, the true badged and oath-bound and armable peace officers with full police powers, are going to be the ones that are going to walk up to that black-robed priest sitting in that chair and take him away. In fact, the bailiff in there would be able to do that if he knew that that's what was going on. I'm sure he could. But, hey, we're in the Talmudic law, so, people lie, cheat, and steal. You can believe what you're being told, or you can go see what it says. And I just soon go see what it says. So, the county officer certificate of election. Okay, does it say? Yeah. So some of these county officers, first of all, who are they? They're the ones in section 191. Right, so that's what we're talking about. 191. County officers. A person should not be eligible for the office of county clerk, county treasurer, register of deeds, prosecuting attorney, sheriff, drain commissioner, surveyor, or coroner if the person is not registered and qualified elector of the county in which the election is sought. So these are the particular offices they call county offices or officers. If you notice, they're all lowercase, right? So when you walk in the building that you think is the county building, you're going to see a uppercase sign that says county treasurer or register of deeds or sheriff, whatever it is. I don't know that they're the same people. Or at least not in the same hat. This, to me, is more like, well, let's say that this is common law, because it's all lowercase, it's common, right? So, we're talking about things that were done in Old England, and who would have been doing them? Because they had a drain commissioner back in the day, that in the time of Lord Coke, they had a court called the Court of the Drain, and it had to do with the king's revenue. And all these people are just somehow milking your estate, your all capital letter name. We need to put an end to it. But what we need to do first is get them out of office because they're really not holding the office. So let's go get some evidence and give it to a peace officer and let's see what they do. Okay, so in the county, then they have a board of county canvassers, and they have they're going to use the seal of the county. Now, most judges, let's see here. I can't do that. It just doesn't want to fit. County auditor. All right, so the auditor isn't considered in that same group of people, but he still has a certificate of determination. And oath of bond, county auditor resignation. Where is it? What about his certificate of... Okay, where's his certificate of determination and statement of votes? Election. A county auditor shall be elected at the general November election. Okay, certificate of determination, determined at the time, county clerk. Yeah, the county clerk shall file in his office, preserve the original determination of the results of the election, and shall immediately execute and cause to be delivered to the people person declared. Office of County Auditor, a properly certified certificate of election, certified by him under the seal of the county. Okay, well, there you go. So they're still using the county seal. So you can go to any office, and really you're looking to see, okay, how do I know they're elected? Well, they're first somebody had to certify the numbers, and then they had to be given a certificate of election. And where most of these here are in the county, pretty much everything but a county office is going to have the Great Seal of the State, right? Supreme Court Justice, Certificate of Determination. Declared elected, Supreme Court, Certificate of Election, certified by him by the Great Seal of the State. By the Secretary of State, who in this case is somebody working at the Bureau of Elections called the Director of Elections. And, so that's I went to their site, and they don't have an email address I could find on the Bureau, but I'll call and get one and find about doing a FOIA, ask for some of these documents from different offices, and see what they come back with. Right, I just need them to respond. Okay, I got a few other things, though, so hang on just a second. Okay. Again, it looks like right now that you and I are living in this corporate body politic, and we're trying to get registered in the state to be seen in the state. We need to get our proper person name, Robert Allen Rytlewski, to be recognized by the civil authority. But if I was to go to court today and what you would think is the civil authority, and I looked at the docket, it would be Rytlewski, Robert Allen. Well, that ain't me. Right? So apparently there's an error in the records, and how do you get that fixed is getting registered in the right jurisdiction with your proper person and your property, which is your all capital letter name, and say that's my property, because it is. So, part of this has to do with domicile, and domicile was a simple thing that they made a little more difficult because, it was your permanent residence, but then they made it, well, now it's your residence with your expressed intent not to leave. So unless you express your intent, right, somehow tell somebody somehow that you don't plan on leaving, the place you're at isn't considered your domicile. And that's how Talmudic law works. We'll just take what used to be one and break it in two and hide half of it, and you can't do what needs to be done. So residence, the name and number of a street, avenue, other location of a dwelling, including the apartment, unit, or room number, if any. In the case of mobile home, the lot number, and such additional clear and definite description as may be necessary to determine the exact location of the dwelling or of the apartment. And, the number on your house isn't necessarily the lawful designation for it. There could be an error in the records. These people, they lie, cheat, and steal. You're in a system of lying, cheating, and stealing. But term of residence in the state of Illinois and precinct, and I think that's the important thing, is you need to be registered in your precinct. You got to go to your precinct guy and get registered, not to the township guy and get registered. One, maybe the township may be where you get registered to vote, but where you get registered to say that you've established a domicile, I think, is in your precinct. Anyways, I'm going to find out. A little more, though. Except as herein provided, no person shall be registered unless he applies in person to a registration officer, answers such relevant questions as may be asked of him by the registration officer, and executes the affidavit of registration. The registration officer shall require the applicant to furnish 2 forms of identification, and except in the case of a homeless individual, one of which must include his or her residence address. Not the mailing address, the residence address, as we'll see. Because here it says the registration officer shall require a homeless individual to furnish evidence of his or her use of a mailing address. So you go in and get somebody an address, and that's your mailing address. Well, they're saying, well, that isn't necessarily your residence address, so you're homeless. And that's how we're all treated. We're not showing up in the official record. But back to this, and executes the affidavit of registration. Well, that means somebody had to swear you an oath, right? So if you haven't gone to the precinct guy and had an oath sworn about your residence and so forth, whatever this application is they're talking about, then you're not properly registered. But if they won't let you do this, because it's really hard to get anybody to pay any attention to what you're saying with this stuff, well, then you could go to the peace officer and say, hey, they won't let me do this right here. And it says I have to. Well, it doesn't say I have to, but it says no person shall be registered unless he applies in person. And you want to register to be seen in the state. This is the state election code, right? If you want to be seen in the state, do what it says. These forms of identification shall include, but not limited to, any of the following: driver's license, social security card, right? Those have your uppercase names on them. At least here they do, so they're not of any use to you. Public aid identifications, probably in your uppercase. A utility bill. Mine's in my middle initial name. That's still not me. Employee or student identification card, lease or contract for residence, yada, yada, yada. Well, okay, they say you could use those. How about if I use my baptismal certificate, because that does have my proper name on it? You might be able to do that. One of the registration officers or a deputy registration officer, county clerk office clerk shall administer to all persons who shall personally apply to register the following oath of affirmation. You do solemnly swear or affirm that you will fully and truly answer all such questions as shall be put to you touching on your name, place of residence, place of birth, your qualifications as an elector, and your right as such to register and vote under the laws of the state of Illinois. And if you live in Illinois and you never took that particular oath in front of a registration officer, then you never registered to do anything to do with the state of Illinois. The registration officer shall satisfy himself that each applicant for registration is qualified to register before registering him. Okay, yada, yada, yada. So it goes on and on and on. Anyways, so if somebody wants to go look at this closer, this is 10 ILCS 5/4-10. All right? And I believe we're just staying in the same section, but I can't really be sure. But this all kind of follows. Another part, though. Any person claiming to be an elector in any election precinct. See, it says precinct, precinct, precinct. And whose registration card is marked incomplete may make and sign an application in writing under oath to the county clerk in substance in the following form. Now, who's this county clerk? It's lowercase county clerk. Who are we speaking of exactly? I'm not really sure. right? Because a county can be whatever size. It's just a territorial division of land. But it doesn't have to be the big building you walk into with a big sign that says county clerk in all caps. It doesn't have to be the same person. But what can you do? I do solemnly swear that I did on some date make application to the Board of Registry of the precinct of the township, right? The Board of Registry of some precinct of some township, township of, or to the county clerk of some county. Which we may find out in Illinois that we're talking about the county assessor, A-S-S-E-S-S-O-R, I believe is how you spell it, assessor. And that said board or clerk refused to complete my registration as qualified voter in said precinct, and I reside in said precinct, and I intend to reside in said precinct, and am duly qualified voter of said precinct, and am entitled to be registered to vote in said precinct at the next election. I believe it has something to do with your precinct. And so this tells you need to do something with the precinct. So you need to know what precinct you're in, what the name of the township is, and when they give you a hard time, hey, go find a peace officer and say, they're not letting me do this. And there's all sorts of things. And so Michigan has kind of the same thing, although this is, a little bit more in your face what they were doing. But enough of that. Well, Illinois judges. Okay, so I talked about Michigan judges in my video yesterday. We'll look at Illinois judges real quick. The State Board of Elections shall proceed within 31 days after election. So this in Illinois is a thing called the State Board of Elections. We've talked to these people. They haven't been able to produce any paper yet for anybody, as far as I know. Right? And so, and soon, if all returns received, to canvass the votes given for United States senators, representatives, state executive officers, judges of the Supreme Court, the Appellate Court, the Circuit Court, senators, representatives to the General Assembly, state attorneys, every county has one, regional superintendents of schools. And the persons having the highest number of votes for the respective offices shall be declared duly elected. Who's going to determine if they're duly elected? State Board of Elections. But if it appears that more than the number of persons to be elected have the highest and equal number of votes for the same office, the electoral board should decide by lot which person shall be elected. And to each person duly elected, however that happens, the governor shall give a certificate of election or commission, as the case may require, and shall cause proclamation to be made of the results of the canvass. Okay, show it to me. Right? You can't do that for any of these offices that we just spoke of. Then these people that say they're holding that office are not holding the office. They're usurping it. And we need to go get the peace officer and show him what the law says and say, oh, by the way, this law says you have a duty. And, see what they do. No person who is shown by the canvassing board's proclamation to have been elected at the consolidation. Okay, so the canvassing board's proclamation. And shall cause proclamation. Okay, so who's this? The electoral board is doing this. Shall decide by lot, and to each person duly elected, the governor shall give a certificate of election, as the case may require, and shall cause proclamation to be made of the result of the canvass. So I guess the governor is going to tell the board of canvassers to issue a proclamation. So where's the proclamation? But no person who is shown by the canvassing board proclamation to have been elected at the consolidation electoral general election as write-in candidate shall take office until a person has first filed with the certifying officer of the board statement of candidacy. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so again, it's just a matter of reading through things and following the procedure and making them do what they have to do. One last thing to show you that to show you how confusing things can be. This is Rosita got this the other day, and it's a wonderful PDF because it's all the official oaths for, well, what did it say here? Thank you for writing Kane County, right? Remember that, Kane County Sheriff's Department. When actually we wrote Sheriff of Kane County, but okay, Kane County Sheriff's Department, with your request for information pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act. We received a request, oath of office for Kane County Sheriff deputies. Now what about Kane County deputy sheriffs? Because a deputy sheriff is really the sheriff, right? You've been deputized as a sheriff, where a sheriff's deputy is somebody that just works for the sheriff. I'd go back and ask them if they got some of those. But what I want to show you is this is, if there's any law enforcement that end up watching this for some reason, this is what confuses us, right? This says Kane County, Illinois. Somebody faithfully discharged office, Kane County Deputy Sheriff. Okay? This says Kane County, Illinois, but this says State of Illinois, County of Kane. But it's for a deputy sheriff of Kane County. Right? What's going on? Who is who? Isn't Kane the County of Kane? Is that just not a corporate body politic? It's Walmart the size that has the jurisdictional territorial limits of the state subdivision known as Kane County. Right? But this says, that this person is going to faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Kane County Deputy Sheriff, which I really believe is what we want them to be doing. That person there should be, based on that oath, should be a conservator of the peace. You can arrest with a warrant or without. But even with a warrant, you got to be a peace officer because they're the only ones that have the power to arrest. Okay, now so this is this style. See how nice and pretty this is. And then we got this other style. Make that stop doing that. Where this says it's a certificate of appointment that somebody's going to be appointed a deputy sheriff. And the guy that did it is the sheriff of Kane County. And it says State of Illinois, Kane County on this one. Right? There's no County of Kane. It's just everything is Kane County. Well, is that a different jurisdiction than this one? This is State of Illinois, County of Kane, and this is State of Illinois, Kane County. Of course, the guy's got a middle initial, and I don't like that. Can't do that. Right? State of Illinois, County of Kane. For somebody taking office of Kane County Deputy Sheriff. Are these simulated legal processes? Because this is supposed to be an official oath, so it's an official document. To me, it's a simulated legal process if this person isn't who he says he is. State of Illinois, Kane County. Right, now this one doesn't say he's a Kane County Deputy Sheriff, just that he's a Deputy Sheriff. Office of Deputy Sheriff. That's interesting. Now, who is this guy? Who is Sean David Barrows? Oh, and he even used his whole name. Rosita, that one right there. Sean David Barrows. Solemnly swear and affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Deputy Sheriff. Office of Deputy Sheriff, to the best of my ability. He's the stand-in sheriff. Cool, man. That's page 5. Okay. So I remember. All right, let's keep going. But you get the idea. Signed and sworn before me. Somebody, note key. It looks like, pretty much it looks like it was done properly. Although I don't know I've ever seen one done properly. I mean, to me, this one isn't done properly. There is no F. John Randall. Right? You can't appear in an official document in a fictitious name. But they did. And here you go, right? We're back to Kane County Deputy Sheriff. Office of Kane County Deputy Sheriff. One was Office of Deputy Sheriff. This is the Office of Kane County Deputy Sheriff. And it just goes on and on and on. So, we're not really sure who you guys are. If you could please tell us, it'd be really helpful. But, I know a few things that I'd like to be able to take advantage of. And one of them is this, that peace officer's duty to institute proceedings. It is hereby made the duty of any police, sheriff, or other peace officer present and having knowledge of any violation of any provision of this act, and that act would be the election law, to forthwith institute criminal proceedings for the punishment of such offender. We got some more like that. False and assumed names. I went to look at the medical examiner's name here in Michigan, and he's using a middle initial on his license. Or it doesn't show his license, but he's using a middle initial, and to me that's an assumed name. Willful neglect of duty, public officer. Who would that be? Well, that would be a peace officer or person holding public trust. Who is that? Anybody who's sworn a voluntary oath is given an office of public trust. When any duty is or shall be enjoined by law upon a public officer or upon any person holding public trust or enjoyment or employment ever willfully neglect to perform such duty, where no provision shall have been made by the punishment of such delinquency, constitutes a misdemeanor punishable by imprisonment. Right? So they don't want to do their duty, then they committed a misdemeanor. Here we go, lawful tribunal. Okay, so this is the definition of a lawful tribunal. It means a tribunal created, established, authorized, or sanctioned by law. Okay, that would make sense. Or, well, that means this one isn't like those. This is different. Or a tribunal of a private organization, association, or entity, to the extent that the organization, association, or entity seeks in a lawful manner to affect only the rights or property of persons who are members or associates of the organization, association, or entity. And that's the body corporate, body politic that they want you to be a part of, so that they can lord over you with Talmudic law in the nation that they created, that's sitting within the same geographical boundaries as the sovereign state of whatever, of which what you're looking at now, these 750s are out of the penal code. And the penal code are the laws that law enforcement in the state is supposed to enforce. So, and I showed most of this yesterday, and I don't know if there's more than one. Oh, I don't want to get into that too deep. Anyways, that was mainly what I wanted to cover, was some more things to look at election law, to see if we can figure out where to go, to make them take our piece of paper when they say they don't want to do it, to know who to call, to have them come and make them do it. And, this is disenfranchisement. Your voting rights you've been disenfranchised of your right to register as a voter. Doesn't mean I need to vote, actually as an elector. Right? I just have to register. You need to register to establish your domicile. And when you establish your domicile, it will be in your proper person name. And there won't be any more Ritlewski, Robert Allen. Okay, that's what I had. You guys have a great day.